The little girl sat on the hospital bench, her tiny fingers wrapped in a bandage that looked too big for her small hand. Her eyes were red from crying, and her mother tried to whisper words of comfort, but nothing seemed to work. The girl kept repeating in a trembling voice, "My hand hurts so much." The corridor was full of strangers, nurses rushing past, doctors in white coats, but nobody stopped to notice the child's quiet suffering. What nobody knew in that moment was that someone very unexpected was about to walk through those same hospital doors, someone who had faced pain, loss, and loneliness himself, someone who carried the weight of scars invisible to the world, yet still found the strength to lift others when they were weak. His name was Keanu Reeves. The day had started as ordinary for Keanu. He had come quietly, wearing his usual simple clothes. No flashy entourage, no signs that he was one of the most beloved actors in the world. He had come to visit a friend who was recovering from surgery. Keanu always chose to appear unnoticed, blending into crowds, preferring humility over fame. But destiny works in mysterious ways, and as he entered the waiting area, his eyes immediately caught the sound of the girl's soft sobs. He paused. Something inside him shifted. He remembered his own childhood, the struggles he went through, the emptiness of losing loved ones too soon, the way loneliness can feel heavier than any physical wound. When he saw that little girl holding her injured hand, he felt her pain, as if it were his own. Keanu slowly walked over. The mother looked up, startled, almost not recognizing him at first. In her tired eyes, she only saw a stranger, but the moment he kneeled down to be at the girl's eye level, his gentleness filled the air like a soft light. "Hey," he said softly, his voice calm. "I heard you're very brave. Can I sit with you?" The girl sniffled, blinking through her tears. She didn't know who he was, but something about his voice made her nod. Keanu sat beside her, leaning slightly forward so she could see he wasn't towering over her. "I know it hurts," he whispered. "But you know something? Sometimes when things hurt, it means you are healing. Your hand is telling you, I'm fighting to get better. And you are strong enough to let it." The girl's lips trembled, but she looked at him with curiosity now. "Really?" she whispered. "Yes." Keanu nodded, a small smile forming. "I had times when I thought the pain would never go away. But it did, and every time I became a little stronger. You're stronger than you think." The mother watched silently, her heart softening as she recognized the man sitting in front of her daughter. Her eyes widened with disbelief, but she said nothing. She only watched as Keanu's presence began to shift her daughter's fear into courage. A nurse walked by, glancing at the scene. She recognized Keanu immediately, her eyes widening, but he put a finger to his lips, signaling her not to draw attention. He wanted no spotlight, no cameras. This moment was about the child, not him. The girl, for the first time in hours, managed a tiny smile, she whispered. "But it hurts when I move my hand." Keanu leaned closer and whispered gently, "Then don't rush it. Sometimes the bravest thing is to wait. Sometimes being brave is not fighting hard, but resting when your body asks you to." "Can you do that?" The girl nodded slowly. For the next few minutes, Keanu stayed by her side, asking about her favorite colors, her favorite storybooks, and what games she liked to play. Little by little, her tears stopped. Her mother's shoulders finally relaxed, and a quiet peace fell over the small corner of the hospital. But what nobody knew was that this simple meeting would grow into something much bigger. The girl's story would not end here. Her pain would connect with Keanu's past in unexpected ways, bringing hidden truths to the surface, testing resilience, and changing lives forever. Because sometimes a single act of kindness opens doors that fate has kept closed for years. And Keanu, though he did not know it yet, was about to step into a journey where one little girl's pain would teach the world about love, humility, and the power of never walking away from those who suffer in silence. The hospital hallway grew quieter as evening approached. Most visitors had gone home, and the soft hum of machines echoed faintly in the distance. Keanu was still sitting near the little girl, his calm presence giving her comfort. But behind his gentle smile, His mind was wandering back to memories he rarely allowed himself to touch. Her small hand, wrapped in bandages, reminded him of nights long ago when he had faced injuries of his own. Not the kind that could be fixed with medicine, but the kind that left invisible scars on the heart. He had lost his best friend to tragedy, lost the woman he loved to fate, and yet he kept going. Now, as he looked into the girl's watery eyes, he wondered if this meeting was more than coincidence. The mother finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Thank you. I don't know who you are exactly, but you've done more for her in 10 minutes than I could in hours." Keanu gave her a kind smile, shaking his head. "You're the one who stays with her, who holds her when she cries. You're her strength. I'm just passing through." But the mother shook her head. "Sometimes," she whispered, "we need someone from outside to remind us we're not alone." Those words touched him deeply. He knew what it felt like to carry pain silently, to feel like no one truly understood. The mother's tired face mirrored something he often carried inside, a quiet exhaustion from fighting battles life never warned you about. The nurse returned, this time slower, carrying a chart. She leaned in toward the mother and said, "The doctor will see your daughter soon. It looks like she may need a small procedure to fix the damage." The mother's hands trembled slightly. The little girl looked frightened again, clutching her mother's sleeve. Keanu immediately noticed her change in expression. He leaned closer and whispered, "Hey, remember what we talked about? Being brave doesn't mean you don't feel scared. It means you face it even when you are scared. I think you can do that." The girl looked at him, her lips pressed tight. "But what if it hurts more?" Keanu's eyes softened. He didn't rush to answer. After a pause, he said, "You know, when I was a kid, I fell off my bike once. I cut my hand so badly I thought I would never use it again. I cried a lot. But a kind person told me something I never forgot. They said, every scar tells a story, and stories make us stronger. Maybe one day you will tell someone your story and it will help them too." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? My scar can be a story?" "Yes," Keanu said with a gentle smile. "And maybe your story will be the reason someone else finds courage." The nurse, standing nearby, wiped a tear from her eye. She had seen celebrities before, but none who carried themselves with such quiet grace. Keanu wasn't giving speeches or acting like a hero. He was simply sitting with a hurting child and making her believe she was stronger than her pain. Just then, the doctor arrived. He explained the procedure, trying to sound calm, but the little girl's eyes filled with fear again. She clutched her bandaged hand to her chest. Without thinking, she reached for Keanu's hand with her other one. The mother froze, embarrassed, but Keanu gently squeezed the girl's hand back. "Will you be here when I come back?" she asked softly. Keanu paused. He hadn't planned to stay long. He had come only to see his friend. But in that moment, he realized he couldn't walk away. This child needed him. Not as an actor, not as a star, but as a human being who refused to let her feel alone. "Yes," he said firmly, looking into her eyes. "I'll be here." Her grip loosened, and for the first time, she seemed ready to face what was coming. The mother whispered, "Sir, you don't have to." But Keanu shook his head. "Sometimes we have to. Not because we must, but because the heart tells us it's the right thing." The doctor led the girl and her mother down the hall. Keanu sat back down on the bench, waiting. Time passed slowly. Each minute reminded him of moments in his own life when he had waited outside rooms, uncertain if good news or heartbreak would follow. He thought of the people he had lost, of the nights he had sat alone wondering if life had anything left to offer. And then he thought of this child, how even in her fear she showed courage, how her small voice had asked him to stay. Suddenly, he realized something. Maybe this wasn't about him giving her strength. Maybe this was about her reminding him of something he had nearly forgotten. That kindness has the power to heal not just others, but yourself. An hour later, the doors opened. The mother walked out first, holding her daughter's bag. Behind her. The nurse wheeled the little girl, who was groggy but safe. Her hand was fixed, her face pale but peaceful. When she saw Keanu still sitting there, her lips curled into a weak but genuine smile. "You stayed," she whispered. Keanu leaned closer, his voice soft. "Of course I did. I told you I would." Her small fingers reached for him again, and even though the bandage covered most of her hand, she gave him a tiny squeeze. The mother wiped her tears, overwhelmed. She whispered, "You don't know what this means." Keanu only smiled gently and said, "Maybe I do." What none of them knew then was that this was only the beginning. Fate had connected their lives for a reason. The bond formed in that hospital would lead them into a path filled with trials, secrets, and moments that would test every ounce of their courage. And as Keanu walked beside them toward the exit, something in his heart told him that his journey with this little girl was far from over. The night air outside the hospital was cool and the city lights shimmered faintly in the distance. Keanu walked slowly with the mother and the little girl, who leaned gently against her mother's shoulder. She was tired, her small face pale, from the procedure, but her eyes searched for him again and again, making sure he was still nearby. The mother spoke quietly as they reached the car. "Sir, you've already done so much. I don't want to take more of your time." Keanu gave her a small, understanding smile. Time spent helping someone is never wasted. The mother lowered her gaze, her voice almost breaking. "It's just, I've been raising her alone. Her father left before she was born. Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough for this." Keanu's heart tightened at her words. He could see the weight she carried in her tired eyes, the silent battles she fought every day. He thought about his own life, about the loneliness that had often followed him even when surrounded by crowds. He recognized her pain because he had lived through his own version of it. He bent down slightly, looking at the girl. "You know, your mom is a hero. She might not wear a cape, but everything she does for you." The little girl smiled weakly, then whispered, "My mom cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep." The mother froze, embarrassed, her eyes filling with tears. Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That doesn't make her weak. It makes her human. And being human is more powerful than pretending to be perfect." The mother wiped her tears quickly, whispering, "Thank you. I don't even know your name." Keanu hesitated. He didn't want the moment to be about his fame, about who he was in the eyes of the world. But he also knew honesty was important. "My name is Keanu," he said softly. Her eyes widened, realization hitting her slowly. She looked at him with disbelief. You're him? The actor?" He gave a small nod, almost shyly. "Yes, but that's just a job. Right now I'm just someone who didn't want your daughter to feel alone." The mother stared for a moment, then smiled through her tears. "You're more than what people think." Before Keanu could answer, the little girl tugged at his sleeve. "Will you see me again?" she asked in a fragile voice. His heart ached at the innocence in her question. He knew his life was often full of travel, projects, and unexpected turns, but in that moment he couldn't bear the thought of her believing she would be forgotten. "Yes," he said firmly, "I'll see you again." And he meant it. Days turned into weeks. Keanu kept his word. He visited the little girl when he could, never making it about himself, always making it about her. Sometimes he brought her small books, sometimes just stories from his own life to make her laugh. She began to heal, not just from her injury but from the fear she once carried. The hospital staff whispered about him, but he never stayed long enough to let it become a spectacle. His kindness was quiet, hidden from cameras and headlines. But fate was preparing a test. One evening when Keanu arrived at the hospital again, he noticed the mother in the corner of the waiting room, speaking urgently to a doctor. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. Keanu walked over carefully. "Is everything all right?" he asked. The mother turned, her eyes red. "They found something," she whispered. "They say there might be a deeper issue with her hand, something they missed." Keanu's chest tightened. He looked toward the little girl who sat quietly on the chair, trying to stay strong. The doctor explained in a low voice. We're concerned about nerve damage. If not treated soon, she may lose some movement permanently. But the procedure is expensive and— The mother interrupted, her voice breaking. I don't have the money, I barely manage rent, I don't know what to do. Keanu felt a storm rise inside him. He had seen wealth wasted on things that didn't matter, while here was a child at risk of losing something precious because her mother couldn't afford the cost. He crouched down to the girl's level again. Hey, remember what we talked about scars becoming stories? Well, this story isn't over yet. We're going to make sure you heal fully. The girl looked at him with hope while the mother shook her head. Sir, please. You've done enough. I can't let you, but Keanu interrupted softly, his voice steady. Sometimes life gives us a chance to step in. If I have the means to help, how can I walk away? The mother's tears fell silently. Keanu spoke to the doctor, arranging everything without hesitation. It wasn't about charity or publicity. It was about doing the right thing. But deep inside, he wondered, why had he crossed paths with this girl? Why did he feel so connected to her pain? What was fate trying to teach him, as the little girl was prepared for the next stage of treatment? Keanu sat quietly in the waiting area, staring at his hands. And for the first time in years, he whispered to himself, maybe I was meant to meet her. The waiting room was dimly lit. The only sound was the soft hum of the vending machine nearby. Keanu sat in the corner, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on the floor. Every now and then, he glanced at the door that led to the operation room, where the little girl was being treated. The mother sat beside him, her face pale with fear. She whispered almost to herself, what if she doesn't wake up the same? What if something goes wrong? Keanu turned his head slowly, his eyes calm but heavy with understanding. Sometimes fear grows louder than reality. Sometimes it makes us imagine the worst. But I believe she is stronger than we think. Children, they surprise us. His words were simple, but they carried weight. The mother nodded, holding on to them as if they were the only thing keeping her steady. Minutes turned into hours. Keanu's mind wandered back to the many times he had sat like this before. Waiting rooms had always been cruel places for him. Silent, halls where hope and fear battled each other. He thought of people he had lost, of how fragile life could be. But now, in this moment, he prayed silently for the little girl who had come into his life without warning, yet felt like she had always belonged in his story. Finally, the doctor came out. His face was serious, but not grim. The procedure went well, he said. It will take time, but with therapy she can recover most of her hand's movement. She's resting now. The mother burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing over him like a tide. Can we see her? Keanu asked softly. The doctor nodded. She'll be drowsy, but she'll know you're there. Together, they entered the room. The little girl lay in the hospital bed, her hand wrapped again, machines beeping gently beside her. Her eyes fluttered, open, and when she saw Keanu, her lips curved into the faintest smile. You stayed, she whispered weakly. Keanu leaned close, his voice soft but steady. I told you I would, and I keep my promises. The girl's eyes closed again, but the smile stayed on her face as she drifted back into sleep. The mother looked at Keanu, her voice trembling. I don't understand why you're doing this for us. You don't even know us. Keanu's eyes stayed on the girl. Sometimes we don't need to know someone's whole story to help them. Sometimes it's enough to see their pain and decide not to look away. The mother lowered her head, her tears falling silently. The following days became a rhythm. Keanu visited often, bringing quiet strength to the girl's recovery. He read to her, told her stories from his childhood, and sometimes just sat in silence so she would never feel alone. The hospital staff watched in awe, but soon whispers began to spread. Reporters had somehow heard that Keanu Reeves was seen visiting the children's ward. One morning when he arrived, a group of photographers waited outside the hospital. Keanu's steps slowed as the cameras flashed. He hated this. Kindness was never meant to be turned into a headline. It was supposed to be private, human, real. The mother appeared at the entrance, her face full of worry. "They're making this into something it's not," she said softly. "People will say you're doing it for attention." Keanu shook his head firmly. Truth doesn't need defending. What matters is her healing, not what they write. But still he felt a heaviness settle inside him. The girl deserved peace, not noise. When he entered her room, the little girl noticed his troubled face. "Why are you sad?" she asked in her small voice. Keanu forced a smile. "I'm not sad, just thinking." But she shook her head. Children have a way of seeing through masks adults wear. "Don't worry about them," she whispered. "You're my friend. That's real." Her words struck him harder than any headline ever could. Days passed, and the girl's strength slowly returned. She could move her fingers a little now, and each tiny step of progress filled the room with joy. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange, Keanu sat by the window with her. She was holding a small notebook where she tried to draw even with her stiff fingers. "It's hard," she said with frustration, her lips pressing tight. Keanu leaned closer. "Hard doesn't mean impossible. Every line you draw is proof you're trying, and trying is the bravest thing of all." She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Will you always be my friend?" His throat tightened. He wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her forever. But he knew life was unpredictable, that he couldn't always control where he would be. Still, he also knew he could never let her feel abandoned. "As long as you need me," he said gently, "I'll be here." She smiled, satisfied with his answer. But outside the room, storms were brewing. The media frenzy grew louder, and soon the hospital management began to worry. They hinted to Keanu that his visits were attracting too much attention, that it might disturb other patients. He stood quietly, listening to their concerns. When they finished, he only said, "If my presence causes harm, I will step back. But please don't let her believe I left because she's not worth staying for." The words silenced the room. That night, Keanu walked home through the city streets, his mind heavy. He wondered why this child had entered his life, why her pain felt tied to his own, why helping her seemed to fill the empty spaces in his heart. And then he realized something. Maybe he wasn't just helping her heal. Maybe she was healing him, too. The city night was restless, and so was Keanu. He could not sleep. He kept replaying the doctor's words in his mind, the mother's tears, the child's quiet smile as she whispered, "You stayed." Those 3 words echoed louder than any applause he had ever received on stage or screen. But the world outside was not silent. The media had begun digging, questioning who the little girl was, why Keanu visited her so often, and whether there was some hidden story. Headlines spread like wildfire. Cameras waited outside the hospital, desperate to capture a moment that could be twisted into gossip. The mother noticed the change first. One morning, when she brought her daughter to therapy, she found a crowd of reporters blocking the entrance. Microphones were shoved in her face. "Who is Keanu Reeves to you? Why is he paying for your child's treatment? Are you taking advantage of his kindness?" The mother froze, her hands trembling. Her daughter clung tightly to her, frightened by the noise and flashing lights. Before the mother could respond, Keanu arrived. He walked straight through the crowd. No bodyguards, no anger in his voice, only calm. "Leave them alone," he said firmly. "This is not a story for you to exploit. This is a child's life, not your entertainment." The cameras kept clicking. The questions kept coming. But Keanu placed his arm gently around the mother and led her and the girl inside. His presence was like a shield unshaken by the storm. Inside, the mother whispered, "Why are they doing this? I didn't ask for any of this." Keanu sighed. "Because the world loves stories, even when they don't belong to them. But remember, this truth isn't written in their papers. It's written in the way we live." The mother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she nodded with strength. The days that followed were harder, The hospital grew cautious. The staff worried about attention, and the mother considered pulling her daughter out of treatment early to escape the noise. But Keanu refused to let that happen. "If you stop now," he told her gently, "she may never recover fully. Don't let the noise of the world steal her chance at healing." The mother looked at him, her lips trembling. "But what if they destroy us in the process?" Keanu's gaze was steady. "Then let them, because kindness will outlast every headline." The girl's recovery continued, but something new began to show. One evening, while trying to move her fingers, she suddenly winced in pain, dropping the pencil she had been holding. "It hurts too much," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Keanu leaned forward, picking up the pencil and placing it gently back in her hand. "I know it hurts, but every time you push through the pain, you're teaching your hand to fight. And you're teaching your heart too," she sniffled. "But what if I fail?" Keanu's voice softened. "Then you try again. Failing doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're still brave enough to try." The girl's small lips curved into a smile, even through the tears. "You sound like my dad would have if he was here." The room grew still. The mother froze, her face tightening. She quickly looked away, her eyes shining with a secret Keanu hadn't noticed before. Keanu studied her quietly. He didn't press, but something told him there was more to this story than he had been told. Days later, his suspicion grew stronger. The mother had been avoiding questions about the girl's father. She had told him once that the man left before the child was born, but her hesitation, her sudden silence whenever the subject came up, it made Keanu wonder if there was more to it. One night, after another long visit, Keanu stepped out of the hospital and found a stranger waiting by the entrance, a man tall and rugged, his eyes dark, his stance restless. "You're Keanu Reeves, right?" the man asked roughly. Keanu nodded cautiously. "Yes." "Who are you?" The man's eyes flickered with something between guilt and defiance. "I'm her father." Keanu froze. The man's voice grew heavier. "I know what you've been doing for her, for them. But I didn't walk away because I wanted to, I was forced to. And now I want to come back." The weight of his words hit Keanu like a wave. The world had painted one story. The mother had shared another, but now a new truth was pushing its way into the light. Keanu stared at him, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke softly but firmly. "If you want to come back, you'd better prove it. Because that little girl doesn't need more broken promises. She needs someone who will stay." The man swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "I intend to." Keanu's eyes narrowed, a storm building inside him. This was no longer just about kindness. This was about trust, about protecting the fragile hope of a child who believed in him. And as he walked away that night, Keanu knew one thing. The greatest test had not yet begun. The next morning, the hospital hall felt heavier than usual. Keanu walked in with quiet steps, his thoughts still weighed down by the man he had met the night before, the father who had returned after years of absence. He found the mother sitting near the window, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. When she saw Keanu, her eyes filled with unspoken worry. "He came to see me," she whispered before he could ask. Keanu sat down slowly. "And what did you tell him?" Her lips quivered. "I told him he can't just walk back into her life, like nothing happened. I told him she doesn't even know him, but he said he wants to try." Silence stretched between them. "Do you believe him?" Keanu asked gently. The mother shook her head, tears spilling. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe, for her sake. But another part of me is terrified he'll hurt her again. She's only just learning how to trust." Keanu leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Then we protect her. Whatever happens, she should never feel abandoned again. Not by him, not by anyone." Just then, the little girl entered the room with the nurse, her small hand still wrapped but stronger now. She smiled when she saw Keanu. "Look," she said proudly, wiggling her fingers. "I can move them better now." Keanu's face lit up, with a soft smile. That's amazing. You're winning the fight. She giggled, her joy filling the room. But then, her eyes noticed her mother's tears. Why is Mommy sad? The mother quickly wiped her face. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking. But the girl tilted her head, her eyes sharp in their innocence. Is it about my dad? The room froze. Keanu and the mother exchanged a glance, both startled. You know about him? The mother asked softly. The girl nodded. Kids at school ask why I don't have a dad. Sometimes I pretend he's away for work, but I know he's not. Her voice cracked slightly, but then she whispered, I just want someone who doesn't leave. Keanu's chest ached at her words. He reached out, gently holding her small hand. Listen to me. Families are not only the people we're born with. Sometimes family is the people who choose to stay. And I promise you, there are people here who will always stay. Her eyes softened and she leaned against him, her trust shining through her tired smile. Later that evening, the father returned. He stood outside the hospital room looking uncertain. Keanu stepped out to meet him. You can't just appear and expect forgiveness, Keanu said quietly. The man's jaw clenched. I made mistakes. I left when I shouldn't have. But I want to fix it now. Keanu's eyes narrowed. Wanting isn't enough. You'll have to earn it slowly. She deserves more than words. She deserves proof. The man's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. I'll try. Keanu walked back inside, his heart heavy. He knew the girl's journey was not only about healing her hand, but also her heart. Weeks passed. The girl continued to recover, each therapy session bringing more movement back to her fingers. She laughed more now. She smiled more freely, and she held Keanu's hand like it was the anchor that kept her steady. The father began visiting too, carefully, under the mother's watchful eyes. He brought small gifts, read to her sometimes, and tried to earn back her trust. It was not easy, and the girl often looked to Keanu whenever she felt unsure. One day, while practicing drawing again, she looked up at both men standing nearby. Her voice was small but steady. I don't care about mistakes, I just care about who stays. Her words sank into the room like a quiet truth. The father lowered his head in shame. Keanu, on the other hand, knelt beside her and said softly, Then remember this, you are never alone. Not now. Not ever. Months later, the hospital visits ended. The girl's hand had healed enough for her to live a normal life. She could draw again, play again, and hold her mother's hand without pain. On the final day, as she walked out of the hospital doors, she turned to Keanu with shining eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You stayed. Keanu's throat tightened. He brushed her hair gently and whispered back, Always. The mother's eyes met his, full of gratitude words could not carry. You changed her life, she said softly. Keanu shook his head. She changed mine. That night, as Keanu walked alone through the city streets, he felt a quiet peace he hadn't known in years. He realized something important. Life is not measured by fame, wealth, or headlines. It is measured by the lives you touch, by the kindness you leave behind, by the promises you keep. And somewhere in the world, a little girl slept peacefully, her hand healed, her heart stronger, because someone chose to stay.